Hey everyone, I know it's been a long time, but Daddy's podcast is starting right now.
Welcome to Volume 2 of the Lessons for Success show, the podcast heard by nearly 3,000 students, teachers, coaches, and others across the world. I'm your host, Adam Wardlaw, a middle school science teacher and high school football coach in South Carolina, USA. The goal of each episode is to share the stories of various people and the life lessons they've learned along their journeys. Before we get started, be sure you're following the show on all of our social media platforms, including Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and yes, even TikTok. Simply search L4S Show. Just remember, it's the number 4. Also, be sure to subscribe to the Lessons for Success Show YouTube channel, where all episodes are uploaded. If you're an educator, coach, or business leader, feel free to send the links to these episodes directly to your students or employees so they can benefit as well. Without further ado, let's start the show.
Daddy, who's the guest on your podcast this week?
Coach Kenny Simpson is currently the head football coach at Southside High School, a 4A school in Arkansas. Taking over a program that had won 8 games in 5 seasons and had been on a 20-plus game losing streak, Simpson has led Southside to the playoffs for 4 consecutive seasons and won 2 conference titles in the past 3 seasons. Simpson's first book, Find a Way, What I Wish I'd Known When I Became a Head Football Coach, has already been a bestseller on Amazon in several categories. Another book is already in the works and will be available in November 2020. Simpson began his coaching career at Madison Academy in Huntsville, Alabama. He served as the junior high basketball and football coach before working into a varsity coaching role in football. He graduated from Harding University in 2003. He's married to Jamey and has 3 children, Avery, Braden, and Bennett. The couple was married in 2001 after meeting at Harding University. You can keep up with Coach Simpson on Twitter and Facebook at FBCoachSimpson, and be sure to check out his website, fbcoachsimpson.com, for more resources.
Well, man, I appreciate you having me on, and I think it's cool that you're doing something like this for the next generation coming through. And I think this generation of, especially young men that I deal with a lot, is all about learning from people, where I was not so much that way at their age. I thought I was a lot smarter than I really am. It's taken me a while to figure that out. But just some background information on me. I graduated from Harding University back in 2003. So I turned 40 just about a month ago. And so life changes, when you kind of get there. But I was able to get a head coaching job at 27. I kind of worked up pretty quickly, went from a junior high coach to a varsity assistant to a defensive coordinator at 25. And then I was just kind of handed the reins of a 4A job in Alabama, which is pretty good in high school football, at 27 years old. And kind of just thrown into the fire. I was very blessed early on. I think we probably won in spite of me. But we had 3 years there. My wife and I decided we wanted to get back to Arkansas. We really enjoyed being at Harding and being closer to her family. So I took a job at Southside Charter High School. And they were, at that point, they weren't a charter high school, it was just a public school, or 4A school in Arkansas. And they'd had football about 5 years and had won 8 games in 5 years. And we're in one of the tougher conferences in the state. So not really anything they were doing wrong. It just was, it's tough when you first start football playing against powerhouses. And so I had to learn very quickly how to adapt and how to adjust. Fortunately, I'd been a part of 2 other schools where I had seen us go from not winning much to winning a little bit. And so I had kind of some experience with what needed to be done. And your podcast is all about character building. And I knew that's where we had to start, was we had to wipe the floor with excuses, get rid of all of those things, and start figuring out what we could do well. In the last 4 years here, we've won the conference 2 of the 4. We've made the playoffs every year, which they had never made it before then. So a lot of firsts. I basically had to raise money. So we had facility issues. And so early on, I just wanted to complain about it and realize, I'll just get off my rear end and go do it. And so we've raised $1.5 million that I've gone out and helped kind of go get for our school, for our kids. And we just I figured if I'm going to tell the kids there's no excuses, then I need to get off my rear ends. I've painted, I've pulled weeds, I've mowed grass, I've done the things that we try to preach to our kids about. And it's been a slow process, but it's starting to kind of turn, and still got a long way to go here. But we're in a pretty good situation now as far as culture is concerned, where our kids understand kind of the standard of expectations and where to go.
You kind of go through your journey, and it seems like you had such an accelerated career path where you kind of got to where a lot of people never get to, but that's their dream. You got there kind of early. I can only imagine that you had a lot of adversity when you first hit that point. What were some things that you kind of had to learn the hard way, or you realized maybe you didn't have as high a priority on during that time period that now you make sure it's at the forefront of what you do?
Yeah. Probably the worst thing that could have happened to me was my first 2 years as head coach. We were pretty good. And so I was the coach of the year, and I was getting awards. And so I'm 29 thinking I got all this figured out. And then the crash comes. Pride goes before the fall, what the Bible says, and it came. And so I got put into a situation here in Arkansas where it was a process, and it was tough. And we went 0-10 one year just trying to build it. And so what I learned through those things was, no matter where you are, no matter how successful you may be or not be, you need to be the same person. And that was challenging for me at 0-10 to still believe in what I believed in, but it tests you. You're tried through the fire, I really think. I think the kids watch you after losses more so than after wins. And so that's been one thing I've really tried to stress to my athletes. And we don't set goals on wins ever here. We just talk about being the best we can be in every aspect of what we do. And I tell them, I don't care what the scoreboard says. We're going to judge you on a whole different standard, on the standard we hold, where that's effort. That's, are you playing the way we expect you to play? Are you sacrificing for your team? And the irony has been that we've won a lot of games and we don't talk about winning ever, because I want these kids to know that if we win or lose, I'm still proud of them. If you play high school football and you stick it through, I'm almost more proud of the guys that didn't quit at 0-10, than the guys that were with me, when we were 10 and whatever. That's an easy year. The hard years are the ones you really build your character in. And it's not fun to go through, but it's been something that I've really have treasured. And looking back, I would never trade that.
When you're first kind of developing that idea of what you want your players to look like, the people in your program, what you want them to be able to do, what did that process look like? Was it, how did you get input on it? What shaped those feelings for kind of your vision for the program?
Well, the hardest lesson for me was, as a head coach, your players are going to look like you, and which means when you see their flaws, that's your flaw. Whatever you're allowing to happen, is going on. And so a lot of times, the longer you're around a team, and as I've learned, they're going to look like you. So when I was young and only cared about winning and didn't care about all of the stuff about off the field character and all that, well, what happened in a close game is my players would implode. And that's a reflection on me. I would implode. I'd get penalties. I would have issues. And so I had to learn the hard way that you've got to emulate that. You have to live that out. You can't just say, we're about high character, and then you're going out and doing all kinds of immoral things on the weekend. You can't say we're about hard work and you're watching a janitor pick up instead of you doing it. We can't say we're not going to make excuses if you're not willing to go out and do the job yourself. And so I really think a lot of times as head coaches, our kids, they are who we are. I mean, they're going to represent you. The standard we try to set for our kids is pretty simple. We just tell them we want to be the best we can be in everything we can. And so that's going to look different, from kid to kid. I tell them that looks different from me than Division I athletes. I had to work really hard to scratch and claw to play, where some guys are naturally born, but they need to continue. The effort standard doesn't drop, and so coaching your kids a little bit differently, but still giving them we want you to have great effort. We want you to have good character. We want you to be unselfish. Those are standards that anyone can achieve, whether their talent is there or not.
But a lot of people who listen in are other coaches, they're teachers, they're school administration, people who work in different organizations and stuff. And it sounds like a lot of these things that you're talking about really transcend into these different areas. For these people out there who are listening that are not necessarily football coaches,
Sure.
what are some things you would share with them about what they can be doing? I guess what lesson can kind of stretch into their field, or it might look a different way in their field.
Well, I think there's a couple things that, whether you coach football or you are a leader in any level of any, or even in your own family, you're a leader. I think you got to be genuine to who you are. Kids and everybody else sees right through putting on some kind of show. So, if you're a guy or a girl who's naturally gifted at something, be gifted at that, but don't try to be something you're not. A lot of times when I was a young coach, I tried to copy like Nick Saban. I'm not Nick Saban. That's not going to go well. I'm Kenny Simpson. And I need to be the best version of that I can be. So being genuine is one. I think having good relationships. I think making sure you are individualizing your relationships with your people. There's no magic pill or program that somebody can give you that's going to make your things go well. I mean, there's things that work. There's some guys out there and girls out there that have great programs. But the reality is your relationship with the people you're around is going to make it work or not work. Do they respect you? And are they going to work hard for you? And so those are two things that I think would go in any field, whether that's education field, business field, or even at home.
Yeah, I always talk about and joke with my principal and other teachers, it's the fun of the people business. It's the, make sure you have those strong relationships with people, because, the golden rule, people are going to come back with how you're giving things out to them. Coach, I know you got a book out that kind of highlights some of the lessons you learned when you first became a head coach and what you wish you had known. You kind of care to elaborate on this book you've got out?
Sure, man. I appreciate you bringing it up. It's basically, I started a book when I was about 30, back when I told you I knew everything. And then I stopped writing it because I realized real quickly I don't know everything. And then I just picked it up last year in the summer and said, you know what? I'm going to change how this book is written. It was going to be written about all the things that I had done that you need to do in your program. And I changed the tone of it because I've gone through it to now basically here's things I've done that did not work and things that I have done that did work. And it's hard to put something like that out because you're admitting all your flaws just right out there into everybody. So you've got to be comfortable with where you are. And so I essentially wrote the book almost like I could time travel back to when I was 27 and getting the job. And I almost want to hand it myself and say, hey, read this. You're going to save yourself a lot of heartache, and so it walks through, different parts of coaching. It would apply to, teaching or really any other walk of life. How are you going to get a job? What are some general ideas that are going to help you? And then it kind of goes to now I have the job. What am I going to do? How am I going to work with parents? How am I going to communicate? It doesn't really deal a lot with X and O's. I didn't want it for that. I wanted it to deal with, here's all the stuff I had no idea I was walking into when I got this job. And so here's kind of a heads up, and maybe it can help some people.
Yeah, the premise of it is amazing to me, because I think back to my first year teaching and kind of that really the first few weeks leading up to when classes started, thinking that what I was doing at the time, this is what's going to make me a great teacher. And then after about a week of actually teaching, you realize that's, I got it all wrong, whatever. So just the idea, kind of the style of the book is why I'd be interested, and a lot of people out there be interested in taking a look at it. I also see where you're kind of putting out a lot of other resources out there. You want to kind of elaborate on some of these other projects you're working on?
Sure. I actually just finish my first course over the book on Coach 2. I've started getting into all this culture stuff. I think there's some really cool stuff out there. And I had like an overwhelming response to my book where people were asking, hey, can you go more in detail? And so obviously I can't just talk to everybody I would like to talk to. So I'll video, kind of walk through these. So I've got it out on Coach Tube. It's basically Head Coaching 101. Here's a premise. Here's a video idea of it. And then I got my contact on there. And I've got some X and O stuff. I am a football coach, so I do like to draw stuff up and talk about it. But it kind of goes back to that premise. I think you can be successful in a lot of things you do. And so if you want to talk to me about everything we do, we're gonna tell you. because it's not a program. It's not that we run this wing tee or that we run the 3-4. And I think we do teach it well. It's the other stuff we're doing that makes it work.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people are starting to realize that there's, just like in education, there's a million ways you can teach something. The reality is the teacher and the relationships and the culture you're developing in your kids is way more important than history or math or English or whatever it is. You got to be good at that stuff, obviously, but what kind of character are we instilling in these kids, and are we teaching them to kind of transcend just our subject matter?
Coach, I appreciate the time you give me today. One thing I like to kind of do to wrap up these interviews is just to ask, if you could share one thing with all the students out there, players out there, other coaches, what is a key to success or a key to leading a fulfilling life? What would that be in your opinion, if you could kind of elaborate on that a little bit?
I think it comes down to the people, the legacy you're leaving behind with the people. If I leave this world and all I've got is a couple of championship rings, then I failed. Whenever I've got a plaque for winning something, then that's awesome. But man, no one cares about that. You want to celebrate with people. You want to be with people. So it's all about, in my experience, the relationship I've had with these kids. And now that I've gotten older, these kids are now grown men. And so it's awesome, to see, okay, they did get at least that, and in our world in education, or even in the business world, or really in any world, what kind of legacy are you leaving behind with the people you touch? And I think that's what makes me get up every morning, is who can I help? What can I do to be better and help them kind of see this? And that goes with my own family. What am I doing with my own kids? And that, obviously, the world I'm working in.
I think it's easy for people to get so focused on the results, especially in today's day and age, whether it's their grade or the wins and losses like you were talking about, or the bottom line of a business, that they do kind of lose sight that it's the people and the relationship you develop along the way that's truly what's important. Coach, I appreciate the time you've given me today. I want to give you a chance to kind of share. If anybody's out there listening wants to get in touch with you or find your work, what are some ways they can be following you and keeping up with what you're doing?
Sure. I started my own website after the book came out. I just had kind of overwhelming response where I just couldn't keep up with stuff. And so it's fbcoachsimpson.com. So I'm putting materials on there that deal with culture, but also deal with football. So they're football guys, ton on there. They're people that just want information about culture building. There's a little bit on there. I'm on Twitter, fbcoachsimpson.com. On Facebook, or they can just send me an email, fbcoachsimpson@gmail.com. And I try to keep up with it as much as I can. Obviously, now I've got plenty of time, so I'm able to kind of help as much as I can.
Daddy, I'm learning so much from this podcast.
I enjoyed my conversation with Coach Simpson, and I think many of the philosophies that he implements as a football coach carry over into all walks of life. Let's review this lesson for success. Coach Simpson and his team has a culture that is devoted to the process rather than the results. If you take care of business day in and day out to the standards set out by the leadership in charge, then the results will take care of themselves. If you are in a position of leadership, your team or company is going to reflect you. So be sure your actions are a great reflection of what you want your organization to be. That's it for this episode of the Lessons for Success podcast. If you like what you heard, be sure to screenshot the episode and share it on social media. Before you close the app, be sure you subscribe to the show on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to also tune into the daily episodes of the show, as well as some of the past interviews we've had with a variety of guests. Thank you for tuning in, and see you next time on the Lessons for Success Show podcast.